Okay, hey everyone. Today is July 2nd, 2019, and this is the weekly meeting of Kubernetes SIG docs, the docs channel, all docs, all the time. Let's start, as we always do, with new contributors. So, hey Jay Pipes, you are new to me.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
So, tell us how you came to this magical wonderland of docs.
I'm actually just kind of starting off on my Kubernetes learning path. Obviously, that entails going through a whole bunch of documentation and blog posts and all kinds of stuff like that, and trying things out. As I've been trying things out and noticed various things that didn't work or things that didn't quite fit, I've been going and trying to contribute to the documentation, some fixes and stuff like that. That's how I kind of got involved, and hopefully I can continue to do that kind of contribution and clean some stuff up.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
That's we always love to hear that. When folks are new and folks come to the docs, and when your reaction to the docs is not to recoil in horror, but instead to contribute and make it a little better than you found it. That's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd just like to say that the docs community has been extremely welcoming. So thank you for that.
These are an awesome group of people. I love working with this group. The SIG of love. Let's see. Vinay Amaranathan, you look new to me as well. Hello.
Hey, hi, this is Vinay. Yeah, I'm new new to this one, and I got the details from Brad, and I got this meeting invite too. So I'm looking forward to contribute more to this community, especially to the time. Even I am start at the beginner level at the Kubernetes also, but I hope I'll be able to learn and be able to contribute back to the community.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Abhinav Korpal, you look new to me as well. Hello. Okay. Let us go from there to updates and reminders. The Q3, Q4 PR Wrangler schedule is up. Sorry, that took a hot minute. Oh my gosh, Caitlin, this is, I think, the first time I've ever seen your face in a docs meeting.
Hello.
So nice to see you. Yeah, sorry, PR Wranglers. The PR Wrangler schedule for Q3, Q4 is up. Please, if you are an approver, please take a look at that schedule. And if that does not look correct to you, or if you see some sort of schedule conflict, like now is the time to fix that. Now, like early is better than trying to do it last minute. So please go over and take a look. Caitlin was our PR Wrangler last week. Thank you, Caitlin. Our PR Wrangler this week is Cody Clark, and our Wrangler for next week is Zach Arnold. And I'm going to put a footnote there to talk about our PR queue when we get there. So I announced this last week, but I also want to boost visibility on it. I'm happy to say that Jim Angel is shadowing for the role of Doc's chair. Everybody, like if you've worked on any of the past 3 releases, you've worked with Jim in some capacity. And Jim is awesome, folks. And he is, he's sort of coming up in the world. And so we are not really teaching him so much as just showing him what he can already do to be a chair. So please congratulate or condole and support him as he grows into this new role. And if you are interested in being a chair as well, that's let one of us know, that myself or Jennifer or Jared when he gets back from sabbatical. And if that's something that you're interested in as well, that's a conversation we can have. Okay, so our Q2 review and Q3 planning meeting is on Thursday, July 25th, and we've scheduled that from 5 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. I know that it's not a perfect time for everyone. There is literally, we have a global SIG. There is literally no perfect time when we can have everyone there. So if that time doesn't work, I'm sorry. Let's see, this is a good time. I'm gonna also put a footnote in this and move straight into our agenda and talk about docs. And before we talk about the state of our existing projects, I'm going to put a note here and ask folks to start thinking about what we want to accomplish in Q3. So as we take a look at our project for writing and editing projects, we've basically, I think with one exception, we've set out to accomplish everything that we set out to do in Q2, and that's really amazing. And we did it more or less on schedule, which is also really cool. So today marks the start of Q3, so we're going to be sort of planning for Q3 a little bit retroactively. Brad Topol, hello.
Hey, sorry for being late.
That's all good. So I want to ask folks to start thinking about what are the things that you would like to see better in documentation in Q3? What are the things that we can meaningfully do? What are the things that we can accomplish? So start thinking about that, about what you'd like to see better in Q3 for docs, and be prepared to discuss that in our Q3 planning meeting. And that also reminds me, sorry, 1 second. This is the joy of a life of ADD. Awesome, Jay, I see that you've already put down one specific proposal. I just dropped a link to a Google Doc in the agenda, and that should be open to everyone, but that doc is the placeholder, sort of the shell for our agenda for the Q3 planning meeting. So if you have proposals that you'd like to make, I'd ask that you drop them in that doc so that we can aggregate them all in one place. Okay, so that said, let's actually go look at where we are for Q3. I swear I had this up in a window. Okay, I'm going to share my screen really quick here. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So of the 3 pieces left to do, need a top level controller's concept guide. I know that we have one PR open for that from SF Tim, aka Tim Bannister. And the last update I saw from Tim was about 2 weeks ago, waiting for the 1.15 release to drop. So I left a note for him. Hey, Brad, can I ask you to mute, please? Okay, all good. So we've got one PR in progress, but Tim also mentions that there's some other pieces that he'd like to do. If this is something that folks are interested in, feel free to chip in. The other piece, update deployment concept topic. Xavi has a PR open to update some deployment information. It would be awesome if we could get that merged. I think there's more to do there, but we've got some solid work that just needs review. And when I say that it needs review, I need to go review it. So this is my call to accountability. I will go review that today. So the other piece that's still kind of outstanding is kubeadm docs. Jennifer, do you want to talk about kubeadm docs?
I don't have any anything to offer in the way of an update, but the thing that could use some exploration, one of the reasons for the focus on KubeADM is that for quite a while, it was the preferred tool for getting at least a complex cluster up and running. I'm not sure that's still the case. I have not kept up the pace of Kubernetes tools development, but I know that the team that was working on KubeADM is now working on a thing they kept calling an API that wasn't an API that I've forgotten the name of at the moment because I'm not really prepared to talk about this stuff. But to give a decent update about where we should focus our efforts, I need to go away and do a bit more. It's not just about updating the KubeADM setup docs at this point. In other words, that effort might be better redirected.
Are you referring to Cluster API?
I wanted to say Cluster API, and then I wasn't sure I remembered it properly. What I get for third guessing myself, right? Yes.
No worries. Yeah. Okay.
Have you? Well.
So I just got off the SIG cluster lifecycle meeting. Yeah, I mean, I can reach out to Justin Santa Barbara and Daniel at Daniel Lipitsky about KubeADM. Are there specific needs? I guess I should look at this document here.
Well, the original intent, as I recall it, because I was kind of pushing on this effort, was to really kind of have at the KubeADM docs with an eye to reorganizing them to make them easier to use as a sort of entry point.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take a look into this and see if I can.
It isn't necessarily a bad idea, but given limited resources, might be better to shift our attention to the cluster API, but I don't know what state it's in. And Jim has his hand up.
Hey, just wanted to comment from my personal experience using KubeADM and have a high interest in the Cluster API project. Speaking as a consumer of Kubernetes and enterprise, we don't have any plans of abandoning KubeADM in the near future. Cluster API is just way too alpha right now. It's really exciting what they're doing. It's really cool, and it seems like the community is really shifting focus in that direction. But as far as the short term, with how alpha that is, I don't see it being widespread, but I don't want to be Jim speaks for the whole team, here. So that's my own personal anecdote for KubeADM. I'd love to see docs.
That's also the impression that I get as a newcomer in this. So.
Yeah, I mean, me as well. I see the shift and I see the momentum, but it does seem very alpha.
So, okay, so that, maybe I don't have to do so much homework. If Cluster API, last I knew, which is really probably 6 months old at this point, Cluster API was very alpha. Sounds like it's still very alpha. Like KubeADM, from a user perspective, is still the entry point that we want to help people with. And so that is, in fact, the right place to focus our energy and attention. And it can only have stabilized further in the intervening 6 months. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think it's fair to say I don't think the Cluster API has stabilized. Is that the other folks' impression that have been watching it? Seems like from the meetings I was at, it was still kind of in flux. I don't know if anybody else, Jim, if you got that impression or not.
I also got that impression, Brad.
Okay.
And also, I mean, KubeADM sort of serves as the foundation for a number of other things, right? So, I mean, I'm thinking of things like kind, right? I mean, so
kind might be a better place to not refocus from KubeADM, but sort of add to the KubeADM effort. But
yeah,
more than I do at this point about the state of development of this tooling. I was very deeply involved for a while and am not so much anymore.
Yeah, I think primarily kind is kind of serving as a feedback loop to KubeADM right now, to just as they run into issues with running various things inside of Docker containers, they're providing that feedback back into KubeADM. But Again, I'm new in here, so.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, Jay and Brad, that it does seem like cluster API is somewhat kind of figuring out where they all kind of are going to land. Mainly my focus when I'm looking into some of this stuff has been like vSphere related. And I know the vSphere cluster API provider uses kubeadm under the hood as of today, at least. And then kind of going full circle on this discussion, it sounds like kind is more for CI for Kubernetes. So there's no real intent for the end user to run it. There's a lot of value there. But really, it's a lot of testing and moving fast for our infrastructure, really quick ways to test. If you're doing your own CI, you could use Kind, but you're not really building net new clusters with Kind. That still seems to be kubeadm. So 2 thumbs up on continuing kubeadm docs.
Awesome.
Cool. That's a remarkable amount of clarity about the subject. That's excellent. Okay. Very good.
So I will undertake to define the updating Kubernetes docs for second half of 2019 in the doc, and I will tag some of you on it.
So can I accurately say, Jennifer, that you will create a plan to move forward?
Yes.
Would you like to set a date for that?
I'll have something in the doc before the planning meeting. How's that?
Excellent. That was what I was hoping you would say.
Well, it makes sense. To be
Cool.
honest, I haven't simply neglected this one. I have honestly spent, long periods of time simply forgetting about it. So this is my wake-up call to get back on board, probably more in a PM role than anything else, but I've got some ideas about where I could contribute to doc quality also.
Cool. Well, welcome back. All right, let's talk about our PR queue next. So I'm looking at our PR queue. Why don't I share our actual PR queue? Share screen. So let's see. Thank you, Zoom, for placing that video window in the most awkward place possible. So just filtering for English. Right now we have 86 open PRs, and that's not inherently bad, but here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing so our first 20 PRs are open in the past 5 days. Yeehaw. But then as we move through, and this still looks pretty good. I mean, it's, like 2 weeks for the first 40. But then from 40 to 60, I start seeing this spike to where we're getting close to a month old. And then even older than that, back to the middle of May. And some of these things I look here at 14.429, there's no CLA agreement attached. So, like folks who are wrangling, if you see an, excuse me, if you see an open PR after like a week with no CLA signed, please feel free to close it and remind the person, hey, feel free to reopen this as soon as you're willing to sign the CLA. But there's really no good reason for a no CLA PR to be open this long. And things like 14.332, without looking at it, I don't know what's going on. Same for 14.331. But if it's just that they're getting feedback and then not implementing it, also please feel free to close these PRs again with a gentle reminder, hey, feel free to reopen this as soon as you're willing to respond to the feedback. I think past experience has shown us that there is nothing quite so motivating to folks closing their PRs as having them closed. And then going, hey, wait, I'm not done with that. And then they come back and resuscitate it. So I guess I
have a cleaner queue.
Can't hear you, Jennifer, sorry.
Or they don't come back, and then we have a cleaner queue.
Exactly. And then we sort of get down to, I don't know what to gracefully call it when we get down to like the problematic stuff. We get down to the you know, like the last 10 or so PRs that are difficult to wrangle for whatever reason. So these aren't always closable for a various set of reasons, but if we can close PRs, I would ask that we do so, because our total is pushing up to, we've got 198 pull requests open right now, and that's a little high. I would like to see us, again, you know, knowing that like 40 of our PRs are open in the last 2 weeks. I'm not that concerned, but I would like us to get that number down to a more reasonable level.
Yeah. Zach, I've been on vacation for several weeks, and then the KubeCon China, so I've been neglectful in doing it. So I am now back and refreshed, and I'm just going to start hitting the queue and trying to help out.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you again for being for running the doc sprint at KubeCon China.
Yeah,
it was very
happy to do it, and it went really well. So.
Awesome.
I mean, I'm no Zach Corlison, don't get me wrong. I mean, we didn't hit that level of quality, but, you know, in a pinch, we got by.
Shameless. Do you want to talk about how it went?
If this is the right time, sure.
Yeah, go for it.
It went very, very well. So what we did, again, I did a little bit of what I'd call death or glory, because I really, really needed a vacation. But at the same time, I really needed to have some content available. And thank goodness for VPNs, because I was able to get there on Sunday and get a nice chart deck done with a lot of visuals. And Rhea was great about translating it. So we had a full day there on Sunday to get really well prepared with the content that people could take away in both English and Chinese. And so what I ended up doing is I did present the new contributors workshop, which went very, very well. And then we used the same content with more content for the deep dive. And we had a lot of folks there. We had a couple folks from the Indonesian translation team, which was wonderful. They had a lot of questions. It was really great. They had a lot of questions. And then we had the China team there, which had all the experience in the world for the same types of questions. So that's what I noticed is, we've got a lot of knowledge there of, well, how do you handle, you translate a page and then, how do you know when it changes, for example? And we are seeing a little bit of, I guess the Korean team built their own kind of tooling for that, and the Chinese team have their own little tooling. So we have to watch that, and maybe perhaps when I suggested that maybe one of the teams ought to submit a pull request to actually make that part of what we have available.
Into our scripts folder, yeah, that would be a good idea.
Just so people have the common tools for how to determine when things change. And then all that knowledge that the China team had, we just I kind of got out of the way. I kind of connected the Indonesian team to them so that they could learn. And as far as I could tell, they were very, very happy.
How many folks showed up, do you think?
For the deep dive? More than I thought. We had 2 sort of circle tables worth. So it seemed like total we had about 18 people, 20 people. We used our time wisely. We did a lot of the intro stuff, and then sat down and covered a lot of whatever the Indonesian team needed or the China team needed. We made the most of our time. We quit a little bit early. I think we quit a little bit early, and then I had to jump out and then go to the new contributors, which was a very full room. I like to do the selling of, believe it or not, most people who try and learn a new open source project, the ones who are successful, one of the tricks that they use is they start by contributing to docs. So people don't realize that even if your long-term goal is to go be the best, technical programming development contributor ever, I know some folks who are the best in the world, and when they go to a new project, they still start by contributing to the docs first. And so I really tried to emphasize that everyone, I think I sent you a copy of the deck, that everybody can contribute, and we have great documentation on how to contribute to the documentation. I think that new contributor presentation went well as well.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Thank you for the update, Brad.
Sure.
Thank you again for being there.
No,
To circle back briefly to closing PRs, got a question. Are there, let's see, add tips on closing PRs to guide somewhere? So I added the URL for our advanced contribution guide for being the PR wrangler for a week. Yes, we specify to close PRs, but we don't give any like actual meaningful data for when or how to do that.
We do actually say if someone hasn't signed the CLA in 2 weeks, close it. So
Oh, nice.
we're specific about that one, but we aren't specific about others. And you provided some other nice examples in this meeting, Zach, that I think would be useful.
Awesome.
But that specific one, I couldn't tell with, I think Rail was asking about, all of the examples that we discussed, not just the CLA one. But that's the most common one that hangs on for a while.
Sure.
And it's certainly the quickest way to get the key down is to get those old CLA no PRs closed. But I thought, some of the others that we looked at are good examples also, simply not responding to feedback in timely fashion.
Okay.
What is the Kubernetes community's sort of culture or etiquette regarding asking for reviews on Slack? Because the last thing I want to do is at here on Slack. I mean, is it okay to ask specific? You can't?
Well, you can't at here. You can't at channel, at everyone, like none of that. Thankfully, that was like disabled.
Is it okay to just ask specific people on the channel, or just type, like paste the link to a thing and try and get review there?
So Jay, are you talking specifically for docs or for the other?
I'm talking generally.
Okay.
In docs, I've noticed it's I can just kind of just put something into Slack and people are fairly responsive. But there's other SIGs that I don't necessarily see that with.
Right. The reason in docs we have a nice culture because we typically, if something's a little on the complex side, we do both a technical review and obviously the doc style type review. So we're typically very comfortable at reaching out to the different SIG communities and asking for that review. So I know from our culture, and Zach can add to that, we're very comfortable going to the SIGs, knowing how we have a couple people in each SIG. We find them. Sometimes what I do is also look at the previous docs or what have you, and go do a git blame, git history, and figure out who wrote it, and then go contact that person if somebody's changing their docs.
That's precisely what I've been doing on some of the things.
And I haven't been beat up for doing that, and I think the others do that as well.
So mailing list post is not the appropriate.
I'm concerned it wouldn't be read.
So
I've noticed that there's quite a few mailing lists and Slack channels and stuff. So
Jay, we don't have a formal culture as far as I know of like these are the appropriate venues. Like this is the appropriate path of escalation. Mm-hmm. I think. I think what I try to do is I try to honor. So usually, like every SIG has a team alias on GitHub, and that team is some variation of that SIG's name trailed by PR-reviews. So like SIG-cluster lifecycle-PR-reviews or something like that.
Okay.
And if you mention that PR review alias for that team into a comment on a particular PR, teams are usually really good about getting folks onto that within I don't think I've had anybody unless I did it on a Friday afternoon. Usually it doesn't take more than 24 hours to get a mention or to get eyes on.
Cool. I wasn't aware of that.
Not getting, if you need like faster feedback, or if you're not getting feedback. You can totally jump into a team Slack channel and say, hey, this is going on. Here's a link to this PR. Could I get a review? I've never had.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, annoying the crap out of people by doing that. So
No, I mean, so one of the things that I love about Kubernetes is that there's like, in some projects, you get that expectation that you're going to manage people's emotional states for them. And Kubernetes is not one of those communities. Like if people feel annoyance, they can feel annoyed all they want, but the expectation is still that we're going to be kind and courteous to each other, and that we're going to put good technical review on anything that comes across our way in a timely fashion. So I wouldn't worry too much about like managing another team's emotional state. Let them deal with it and
cool.
Play on, play up.
No worries. Thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right, Simon Forster, I noticed you were with us, and I wanted to follow up from a discussion 2 weeks ago. Simon, you had mentioned, tell me if I am remembering this correctly, you had the idea of putting together a review pool for internationalization questions in English. Did you want to follow up on that? Did you want to say any more about that?
Yeah, it was a few weeks ago after KubeCon in Barcelona. With some brief discussion, probably a couple of weeks ago. Look, I don't think much has happened there from my memory, certainly my recollection. So I guess probably a question here to the group, how best to perhaps take this forward. Yeah, I'm pretty new to the Kubernetes community myself, so appreciate that. Yeah. So some thoughts about yeah, I guess whether there's still value in this in the first instance, and then secondly, yeah, how best to follow up on a discussion there, and again, is it still a relevant consideration? Is it something that people are still interested in?
I think it's awesome that you're willing to step up like that, like to come in new and be available as a resource. I think that's a wonderful spirit of contribution. So thank you for that. So far, I have not heard a large call for that kind of a specialized English knowledge pool. We have a fair number of our localization teams are also highly fluent in English, so that that kind of a demand is usually met within the team itself. But I would absolutely encourage you, Simon, if you see opportunities to step in and like contribute clarity to any of the discussions that you see, don't wait for permission. You can absolutely jump in and help. But I would say to do that like on an ad hoc or on an as needed basis, rather than waiting for that to be a formal thing, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, I think we'll monitor the situation and see how it evolves. Yeah.
Excellent. And thank you again for being willing to contribute. That's wonderful to come in and be willing to dive in deeply right off the bat. So thank you, Simon. Let's see. Let's move on. Oh, hey, Tamo. Nice to see you. Let's move on. Seth, do you want to talk about a link checker?
Sure. So I've gone through a couple different tools, just some open source ones off GitHub to see what they're finding. Because we have, an extensive website system, it takes a decent amount of time to scan through it, and I'm still traveling, and so my internet is less than great. So I've gotten 20 minutes into a scan, and then my internet drops, and all of a sudden I'm getting 404s and all these links, even though they're completely valid, and the tool's not finding them. So I'm going to keep working on that. I'll be back in the Bay Area at the end of the week, and that'll get a lot easier. And then was just kind of poking around the contributing to the docs pages, the bullet points under that list, and was wondering if at some point we may want to put in not a requirement, but just maybe mention a suggestion once, if we can figure out a tool to use and say, hey, if you update a page that has links on it, maybe run this thing and check it out, to at least kind of get ahead of that before we figure out what automating that process looks like. So that's where I am on that.
Yeah. Thank you for continuing the work on that. I can only imagine the difficulty of trying to test a link checker as your Wi-Fi sporadically dies. So I like the idea of if we find a tool that works, like being able to provide a specific recommendation for it. I think that's a great idea, because it's one thing to ask folks to like check their links, but because we run the spectrum of technical knowledge and technical comfort with we have folks who are like, oh yeah, I run my own, like I've got my own link checker as a cron job in the background, and to like people go, what's a link checker? So I think the more specific that we can be with those kinds of recommendations for quality, the better off that our source is going to be. So yeah, I think that's a great idea, Seth.
Awesome. So I'll keep working on that, and I'll definitely have some more concrete updates next week when I'm back home.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. All right. Let's talk about running Hugo locally. So I noticed that, was it over the weekend or was it just earlier today?
That was just this morning. Time's flying.
Yeah. We had someone report that they were having difficulty running Hugo locally with the commands that we offer. And my initial, admittedly uncharitable impulse was, it's just somebody who hasn't got the setup right. Well, then I pulled and refreshed, and I tried to run it locally. It's not working for me either. So is there anyone who's able to run Hugo locally right now? Any thoughts on that? Jim?
Yeah, I think, so I was looking a little bit before the meeting, and I added a note on the issue as well. I assigned myself, because I think this might be a quick fix, where we go into all the files that are airing, like the blog post or wherever, and we have to add in the variable site.is server. And so right now we have external links, and Hugo fails an external link, and if we gracefully fail on those, we'll be fine. I think it's a quick fix and a non-issue, but I think we did break it by introducing external links at some point, and nobody really has tested it since we've introduced those.
So we need a link checker, is what I hear you saying.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, that, pure confirmation bias, but that matches my experience as well. I'm seeing the same set of error messages. So hopefully that is as quick a fix as it sounds like. And yes, I think that's 2 +1s for a link checker, Seth. Okay. Let's see. That is the end of our scheduled agenda. We've got some time left. Is there anything that folks would like to talk about in our remaining time?
Just a quick comment on the link checker. If I'm not mistaken, link checkers are more for validity. And in this case, it's a resource that is external when you're running it locally without internet. So almost beyond a link checker, or maybe a link checker plus or extended would be a link checker, and then also a external resource checker if we did care about maintaining the ability to run the site offline.
I'm definitely on board with that. The couple that I've tracked down, they're just packages from GitHub, and they're all open source, so it shouldn't be too hard to add something like that in there. Both checking, relative links and then external links.
Awesome.
So Zach, I literally just ran the make Docker image and make Docker serve, and it's working for me. So, I saw a couple little warnings flash by, but I've seen those before. And
so there's a really big asterisk that I think we forgot to clarify, is that this is testing without Wi-Fi. So if you're on a plane and you want to run, so if you were to turn off your Wi-Fi, it'd drop you from the meeting, but I think you'd have the same issue.
If you
build the container locally, but if you try to serve it without Wi-Fi and it tries to snag those external links, is when it starts having issues. You can build the container, but once you try to run it, Hugo goes, meh, external links, can't find them, sorry.
Got it. Okay, my mistake. Yep.
No, no worries.
Good. Curiously enough, so I tested it with my Wi-Fi on, but I turned on my VPN and it chokes as well. So there's a fun use case to try and decipher. Oh wait, no. No, sorry, that was my plan. I didn't actually get to it because, right, never mind. I'm smoking crack, literally right in front of you. Hell of a drug, kids, don't do it. Yes, the use case that we have is without Wi-Fi, solid across the board. Okay, anything else that folks would like to discuss?
Just one thing, if people are interested in working with me, so there is an issue that I linked from the Q3 agenda. I'll just put it in here. Gosh, I have way too many tabs open. So it's in the SIG Docs Q3 2019 planning. I linked to an issue there, which is about removing the cluster directory in K/K. So a lot of this issue is obviously going to be around the integration of all of the end-to-end testing and upstream testing stuff, and that uses the cluster setup scripts, kubeup, and that kind of stuff. However, there is a good chunk of work that needs to be done to remove references within the documentation itself to those scripts and things like logging configuration and stuff like that from the docs itself. So if you're interested in extracting from the documentation references to any of the cluster directory bash scripts and ridding the documentation of that, just find me on Slack and we can do it together. So
awesome.
Has any action been taken on that, or is this a preparation documentation?
So I've already started on some of the logging extraction. There is I list a pull request in that issue, but there are plenty of other places that reference various links into the cluster scripts and that kind of thing. So the idea from Tim Sinclair is obviously long-term. We want to just get rid of the cluster directory entirely, and so the two main pieces there are getting rid of the integration with various testing pieces, and then anything that references it in the documentation. So,
out of curiosity, Jay, is this part of a KEP that Tim Sinclair has open?
I don't believe so. I can check with him. This is mainly just like SIG architecture, code reorganization, code cleanup type things.
Like a good documentarian. I'm just really curious about the context of everything.
Tim Hawken mentioned on, I think it was the Kubernetes dev mailing list maybe 2 months ago. It was like right before KubeCon Barcelona, mentioned cleaning up a bunch of stuff in the cluster directory and the hack directory for bash, like sort of random bash scripts that have kind of accumulated over the years. And Tim created this issue to kind of track all that kind of work. So.
And what the issue points out is the directory's been deprecated for a long time.
The directory's been deprecated and yet is like updated on a daily basis. So yeah,
it's kind of, my understanding is that the issue is sort of outside the scope and the appropriate scope of a KEP, because really what it's saying is we keep saying it's deprecated now. Damn it, let's not just say
yeah,
it.
let's do something about it. Yeah. So
thank you. That's helpful for context. Okay. Well, let's double tap that zombie. Good deal.
I'm volunteering, but it's awesome work, Jay.
Yes, thank you. Okay, last call for things to discuss. All right, that's the SIG meeting. Great discussion today, folks. Have a wonderful week. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Have a great day.
Yep, see you later.